call the meeting to order. So
Okay.
Lee Westler's
Cool.
here.
Crystal
Okay.
Adams is here.
Yep.
Jean Pillow is here.
And Grace is here. Oh, Lori. Okay.
Pam is still trying to connect to audio.
One, two, three, 5.
Pam, you here?
I am.
Okay.
Okay.
There it is.
So we have no alternates to seat, and I see a lot of public here. I know Jen is our Eversource person. So anyone else from the public have anything to talk to our committee about, or people who are here to observe? I see Sabrina, Susan,
I
Oh, Sabrina,
Teresa, Adam.
Jean, if you want to unmute, she's raised her hand.
hi, I'm Teresa Jackman from Eversource Community Relations. I'm here to observe
Okay.
as well.
Okay,
oh,
thanks.
okay.
And Adam, Sabrina, Susan, and Jean, are you also Eversource?
I am not Eversource, I'm public.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have anything to bring to the committee, or are you just observing
Jean.
tonight?
I do have something to bring.
Okay,
My friend Ginny Walton should be here too. Ginny and I both work on the Regional Pollinator Pathway Initiative in Eastern Connecticut, and Woodstock, of course, is one of the first towns to sign up with that. And Wyndham, I'm from Wyndham. We're also signed up in Mansfield. And so we're really interested in the Eversource plan to plant trees, or to tell
Okay.
people to plant trees.
great,
So I
thank
don't know
you.
if we should comment on that now or when.
No.
So I just want to make sure no one
Okay.
else has any subjects tonight. Adam?
I'm from Eversource as well.
Okay, great. Sabrina?
Hi,
Cindy's
I'm with
here, good.
Eversource as well.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And Susan
Jeannie.
Stotts?
Yes, I'm also with Eversource.
Okay.
Okay. And Teresa already said she's from Eversource. Okay, so
Okay.
Ginny
Um,
Walton is here now. Or she was.
Okay, good.
Huh?
She just, Ginny,
Okay, so-
Ginny Walton was, she's trying to get in. Here's Jim.
And these people are,
Ginny Walton is from Chaplin, and she works for the town of Mansfield. Was also on the list of towns for the pilot project for Eversource.
oh, all right.
okay, and Jim, my screen screwed up. Jim's here? Oh, there's Jim. Okay, so we can see Jim as an alternate tonight.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll
Cool.
open the floor up to Jana. We allow the public to give their information, and that way you don't have to sit around for the rest of our meeting. So Jana, take it away.
Thank you. Real quick, I just wanted to see how much time you have available in your agenda. I do have some PowerPoint slides that I could share. So I'm not sure what format you wanted to go forward, and I could share some PowerPoint slides to take you through the basic information of what we're going to be doing in Woodstock and what we shared with the town, or we could just do question and answer. I just wanted to get a sense of how much time you have available.
I'd be interested in seeing the PowerPoint.
Yeah, so give us the PowerPoint and then we can ask questions.
Okay, great. And real quick, just
Thank you.
joining from my team, from Eversource Vegetation Management, we have Sabrina, Adam, and Susan are on the phone. and they're going to be the arborist overseeing these projects in the field. I am a supervisor of vegetation management at the state level, and I've been coordinating these resiliency efforts statewide. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
You dare.
And let me know if you're able to see that.
I see it.
Okay, great.
Yep.
I'm not able to see you, so I won't be able to see if anyone raises their hands for questions. So if you could just keep them for the end, I won't be able to see. My whole screen is the PowerPoint. So to start, I'm going to just go over very quickly some facts about the issues that we see in Connecticut with trees causing power outages, and then talk specifically about our new program to achieve resiliency, the exact segments that have been identified for this work in Woodstock, what that clearance looks like that we're seeking, as well as the permissions process, both with the town right away and also with private property owners. So we see in Connecticut that about 90% of our outages and storms are caused by trees. They also cause blocked roads that can hinder emergency services from reaching residents. And we know that frequent and severe weather storms is something that's not going away. We're going to have to continue to deal with the issues of trees causing power outages here in Connecticut. But we have a vegetation management program on distribution. So when I talk about distribution, that's the roadside power lines. That's not the high voltage lines that run through the woods. This is our distribution system that brings power from our substations along the roads and then to residents' homes. I wanted to share real quick with you. This is the town scorecard for the town of Woodstock. This is a new communication tool that we developed this year to give the towns more information about how trees are impacting residents within their towns. So every January, Eversource Vegetation Management sends out a map that shows where we're trimming as part of our trimming program for that year. But this year we expanded that information to share with the town not only how many miles are scheduled, but also the impact of trees to residents in Woodstock. A large number of trimming miles are scheduled for Woodstock this year. The way our program works for trimming, and this is separate than the resiliency segments I'm going to talk about in a little bit, but the way this works for trimming is that we trim the overhead power line systems along the distribution once every 4 years, and most of the town is scheduled this year. On the right-hand side, you can see tree reliability. That's for all of last year in the town of Woodstock. There was just about 400 outages that were caused by trees. And you'll see that day to day, 61% of the outages caused last year to Woodstock residents were caused by trees. So that's not just during storms. During storms, we see a higher percentage of tree-caused outages, but that's day to day, where you have vehicle accidents, animals, equipment failure, all in 61% of the outages in town last year were caused by trees. This map illustrates what is scheduled for trimming this year, which is pretty much the entire town scheduled for maintenance trimming. So,
Jenna, you're not moving. You're still on the first screen. So only thing we're seeing is the original screen where the truck is with all the wires down. And
thank you for letting me know. I see the, let me try doing this again.
There, you're to the map
there
now.
you go. You're at the maps now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. I appreciate
welcome.
that. So no one saw the scorecard. Oh boy. Okay. All right. So here is the scorecard that I was talking about that no one could see. if I go into presenting mode, can you see that now?
We still see the map. We don't see the scorecard.
Okay, so I'm gonna stay out of presenting mode and just show you, within this version, you can see it in PowerPoint.
Okay.
What I see in PowerPoint is that you haven't started the slideshow.
Right, but I think what's happening is when I start the slideshow, it's not showing the slide that I want it to. So like right now, I'm showing the town scorecard. If I click on current slide, can you see the town scorecard?
All I see
No,
is the
we
map
still
of
see the map.
Woodstock.
Okay, so I don't think it's working. So can you see this well enough that I could continue just in this version of the PowerPoint?
Yeah, whatever works, whatever's gonna work. But right now, we see the 2022 trimming map.
I think if you're not in presentation mode, like you're not presenting from the beginning, each time you start a slide, it's like you have to do a new share.
Can you let me know, what can you see now?
This is trimming map still.
Yeah, we still see
Okay.
trimming map.
Can you see the scorecard?
No.
No,
No.
Okay. All right, that is challenging. We work on Teams, so I'm not sure what is going on here and why this isn't working.
Perhaps if you, oh,
now
there
we
go.
see we see a scorecard now.
Okay, all right. And if I go down, can you see the trimming now?
Now we can
Yes.
see the map.
Okay, all right, great.
Yes, yeah.
All right, I don't know what I did, but I'm just not gonna touch anything else. All right, so again, I'll go back to this. This is your town scorecard. This shows the impacts that trees had to Woodstock in 2021. Since I already talked about it, and I can send you these slides. Feel free to go back and look at them in more detail. And here's the trimming map for all of Woodstock. So this is what's scheduled for this year. It's pretty much the entire town is scheduled for maintenance trimming. So that includes trimming back to what was previously established for clearance. So that is different than our new resiliency efforts that we have across the state, which totals about 20 miles. It's a very small portion of our 16,000 overhead lines that we have in Connecticut, 16,000 miles of overhead lines. The goal of this project is to achieve resiliency. When I talk about resiliency, that's different from reliability, and that reliability is how the electric system performs day to day, every day, with a day like today, where you had some rain come in or even blue sky days. Resiliency is talking about preparing and recovering from very large events, such as a tropical storm, a hurricane, a high impact, low frequency event, something that doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it has a really big impact. So this is along the lines of Isaias, Irene, Sandy, those level of storms. We've identified 4 segments along the overhead power lines that we want to concentrate looking at vegetation in the town of Woodstock. And so when I say a segment, what that means is it's a piece of the circuit that runs from what we call a protection device. So the way that circuits run is you have things called reclosers or fuses that help isolate power outages when you have them occur. So you probably experience this if you live down a side street. If a tree were to come down on your street, there's usually a fuse at the beginning of that street that isolates that outage so that if a tree came down and put out power on your street, the backbone or the main road would stay on. And so the way these circuits are set up is that we have these zones where if something happens within that zone, it's going to cause an outage for the customers that live within that zone. But then also perhaps, depending on where the tree issue is, it might impact customers in what we call downstream. So as the electricity flows throughout the circuit, we are looking not at the entire circuit, but these very specific segments that I'm going to overview one by one with you and talk about the number of customers that are fed with them, both within these segments and also downstream. And the way that you can look at these maps is there is a green dot on the right side of the screen, and that is where this segment begins. And then there's a thick orange line that runs along the middle, and this is Summers Turnpike, and it runs all the way down to the red dot on the left side of the screen. And so this is one of these segments that we identified in partnering with our engineering team, looking at data, seeing where specifically trees were causing repeat power outages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show maps of where all these segments are. They do sort of connect to one another in a couple places. And then also share with you the impacts to customers in the town of Woodstock. So for this one that I showed above, it impacts 3,300 customers every time it goes out because it's on what we call the backbone, meaning that if a tree were to fail on that location, the customers downstream are impacted. This is a communication tool that we developed that we call a segment snapshot. So it highlights for that specific segment. This one's on Summers Turnpike. It's 2.2 miles long. What the impacts are of customers in the town of Woodstock, and then also how trees have impacted it and why this segment was selected. So specifically for this one, this segment had 16 outages caused by trees in the last 3 years. So specifically within this area, there were times where 16 trees or branches caused an outage, impacting 3,300 customers in the town of Woodstock. The next one is also on Summers Turnpike. It continues along. So you'll see the green dot on the lower right-hand side. That's where the segment starts. And then it follows Summers Turnpike along that thicker orange line to the red dot. And that's where this segment ends. So it's a continuation, but we break it up because there are electrical devices in between that may get one full segment. This segment impacts 1,900 customers in the town, about 2.8 miles. It's gone out 7 times in the last 3 years, specifically due to tree-caused outages. And then your next one, this map looks a little bit different because I had to have some things updated on the previous map. But this is Route 169, and it runs from the south point all the way up to the green dot up in the north. This one impacts 300 customers, and it's gone out 20 times in the last 3 years due to tree-caused outages specifically on this area. So that's the highest number of any of the segments that we've looked at this year across Connecticut. And then the fourth and final segment, this one is not a backbone. It is a lateral, smaller customer count segment. This is Child Road. And this one is 43 customers. So it's a smaller area, but it hit the criteria when we were looking at these smaller customer count segments. And it's been out 10 times in the last 5 years due to trees on that road. What we're looking to do in these specific areas, so this is not across town, along all those miles that are scheduled for this year, we're going to be looking for maintaining the clearance that was previously established with our trimming programs. In these concentrated areas that have had repeated tree-caused issues, we are going to be looking at the trees within the fall zone. We define that as a tree if it were to fail at the base, could impact the overhead power lines. And so that will include trees on private property, which we will need consent to do any work with, and I'll get into that in the next slide. But we'll be looking at trees on private property, looking for defects, demeanor of the tree, species characteristics, and looking across the street as well. Part of this conversation with the homeowners will be incorporating right tree, right place plantings. So looking at trees that are compatible to being planted near the power lines because they mature at less than 30 feet in diameter. And those tree plantings will be provided and paid for by Eversource within these specific segments. And part of the reason that we're doing this is we have a new app that our tree crews are using so that anytime a tree crew goes out because a tree fell on the power lines and caused an outage, they're collecting data. They're collecting what kind of tree was it, how far was it from the lines, was it dead, did it have defects? And we're seeing that a majority of the outages come from outside the trim zone. When we think about our trim zones, we have such tall trees in Connecticut. And so in these areas that we're having repeat problems, we are looking outside just 10 feet, because if we have an 80-foot tall or 60-foot tall tree, it can still impact those lines and those backbones. So we're looking outside the clearances associated just with our trim zones. All of this work will follow the same state statutes and regulations that our trimming programs do. So we need a town permit in order to work within the town right of way. Same goes with the state roads. And then we also need signed consent when we're doing any work on private property. So a trained permission specialist will be going out to talk to the property owners, seeking their consent to do this work, but we will need consent to do any tree work on private property. And then those conversations about tree pruning, removals, and the replanting efforts will take place one-on-one in person with the property owners. We'll also be having those discussions with the town and the state, because the segments that have been identified in the stock include the town, the state, as well as the scenic byway, federal scenic byway. So because we know we're going outside of those trim zones that we historically maintained, we are going to be supplementing with compatible vegetation. So looking at pollinator habitat, native species, stump grinding, and we have two tools that we'll be utilizing. We have our 30 under 30, which was developed with Michael Durr and some of our vegetation management managers a couple of years ago, that suggests 30 trees under 30 feet tall that can be planted near the utility lines, as well as our new emphasis on pollinator friendly trees and shrubs. And so that will be part of this conversation that we're having with homeowners, specifically in the segments where I shared the maps here tonight. So that concludes the slides that I wanted to share with you. So I will go ahead and open it up to questions.
Okay, so if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand and I'll call on you, and then you just identify yourself. So anyone have any questions? Well, I'll start with the question. So Jenna, I think your slide 15, you showed a picture of like before and after.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the trees that you showed before look to me like that's going to be the after. Because you have a picture of a 1 or 2 story house with trees about the size of the house. Your before looks to me like your after. Is that inaccurate?
No,
Let me
The
see if I
before
can-
had much taller trees, Lee.
No, Grace, that's not my question. Jenna, a 30-foot tree is gonna be much higher than the house and also much higher than the power lines. Are you still
No.
worried that they're gonna, Grace, you can everybody mute your phone until you have I calling you to talk. So go ahead, Jenna.
Yeah, so I absolutely understand what you're saying about the graphic, and I think we need to make the house a little smaller. This is our first go around, and we've had great feedback about the graphic with how other people interpret it. And so, yes, the before, those trees might be 40, 50, 60, 70 feet tall. The after,
Okay.
we're looking to plant trees that don't get more than 30 feet tall in maturity. However, as we move further away from the power lines, you know, we can plant things that, the goal is to plant trees that when they reach their mature height, if they were to fail at the base, they couldn't hit the power lines. And so,
And that would include 30-foot trees?
so trees that grow to 30 feet at maturity, as long as they're planted, you know, I'm not talking directly under the power lines, 10 feet offset. Then when
Okay.
they can't impact the power lines if they were to fall. And so what we really want to encourage, and actually Eversource has done a lot of work on right tree, right place, and we've created some utility arboretums as examples of trees that can be planted near the power lines and never reach them at maturity. And so we're looking to plant trees that grow 20 feet, 25 feet, 30 feet tall at maturity, as well as shrubs and pollinator plants.
Okay, thank you. Jean, Philip. Unmute.
Yes, thank you, Lee. So listening to your presentation, it appears that property owners can refuse this offer. Will there be any penalties if they refuse and then subsequently that tree falls on the power line?
Absolutely not. So PURA, the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority that oversees our programs, makes it very clear that there is no retaliation or cost associated with trees that people refuse. And so on private property, residents can refuse, and if the next day a storm comes through and that tree falls down, you know, there are no repercussions.
Okay, one last question, maybe. I might come up with more. Your list of 30 trees under 30 contains many trees that are not native to the United States. And in Woodstock, we're working very hard to encourage our residents to plant native trees to help support pollinator species that are very important for both maintaining the healthy environment and supporting our local agriculture. Would you consider an alternate list of trees to produce to homeowners rather than Coosa dogwoods that produce fruit that only monkeys in Korea eat? I mean, that it's a beautiful tree, but it's not what our goal is.
I completely understand, and this is feedback we've gotten from a lot of towns, and I'm not sure if Susan is still on, if she wants to just really quickly chime in on, she's working on a native plants list to make a new poster specifically of Connecticut native plants because we've seen such an emphasis on that. I'll just pause real quick and see if she wants to add anything.
Yeah, Jenna, we are working on that right now. Bob and Julian and I put it together, and we're working on shrubs, small trees under 30 feet, and also perennials that will be strictly 100% native.
Susan, I would be happy to help you with that list. I've already been in touch with Wild Ones and with the Pollinator Pathway Northeast, who have provided me with such a list. And if you put your email address into the chat, I will share what they sent me.
Oh, that'd be great, Jean. And I'll put my phone number in there too if you want to text me, okay?
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
And so I know this was a question that was previously shared with us about if we could encourage natives in our conversations with property owners, and that's absolutely something that we could do. Even if the town wanted to work together with us to create another list, an alternate list, that's something we could provide. We won't say 100% that we won't plant anything non-native because someone could have a favorite tree that they want to see. And so we're going to encourage native species and all compatible with the overhead power line. So we'd love to work together with you on that, with providing that information to the homeowner. But it's very flexible on what we can plant as long as it's not going to grow taller than the power lines.
One
Okay,
last
thanks.
comment. We went through a process a few years ago with a donor who wanted to donate dogwood trees to plant along the same roads that the majority of your project covers, 171, 169, the state highways. And we ran into some issues with how wide the right of way is with the DOT. And we could not get one setback number from the DOT because it varied in different parts of the highways. How do you plan to deal with that?
So we deal with that all over Connecticut, and it can be the same cases even within towns where the town right of way changes from road to road with these old, scenic long, long stone walls and things that we have. And so we work with the state to determine the right of way. So we work very closely with the state DOT on our work on the state roads, and that's part of what we do. It does
Okay,
vary.
thanks.
It's not usually consistent.
Grace, note that Jordan Stern is with us during the
Okay.
meeting. Okay. Ginny, your question.
I don't have a question. I was asked to make a public comment, so I don't know if this is the period. I was having a hard time logging on. So is this the time to make a public comment?
Public comment regarding the
Regarding the trees,
Okay.
trees, yeah.
Sure.
Is this,
And you're a Woodstock resident, or
I am
you're-
not, no, I
Okay.
am part of the pollinator pathway, which is Woodstock is represented on that. I live in
Okay.
Chaplin and I work
Okay.
for the town of Mansfield. So I work with the town of Mansfield Sustainability Committee. So I'm just really speaking on behalf of somebody who's interested in pollinators and would like to see I like the list, the beginnings of this list that Eversource has put together, but I'd hope that again the emphasis would be on natives only. And also to go with that, if we're calling in pollinators to our property, people need to know that they cannot be using just any old pesticide and really bring forth, have a two-pronged message. Like, you're planning for pollinators, then stay away from insecticides, because otherwise you're just doing a mass murder. So that was my comment, not a question.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Jean DeSmith.
Thank you. Yes, and I am also from out of town. I'm from Wyndham, and I'm on the Regional Pollinator Pathway Initiative, along with Jean and Ginny. And if I could start just by asking a question, I'm not clear. I couldn't hear what you were saying very well, Jenna. Just so you know, I don't know if it was just mine, but it was kind of garbled. Is Eversource paying for the planting, the replanting of the trees, and paying for the trees?
Yes, yeah, and I do apologize. I've had some audio and technical issues, so hopefully you can hear me clearly now. So in these segments, Eversource will be providing the trees and doing the planting.
Okay, well, that's great. In that case, I definitely think you should go all native. You have the right to do that. As other people are pointing out, pesticide use, which Eversource is guilty of horribly abusive pesticide use. The native trees don't need the pesticides. The pretty trees that somebody might want to put in are the ones that are going to have the Asian beetles and things like that, that are going to need a lot of pesticides. So Eversource should be proactive here and not do non-native, even though there may be pretty ornamental trees. We really need you to stick with that. I also was wondering if you thought about the carbon footprint impact of taking down all these 80-foot trees. Oak trees are huge pollinators and carbon sinks, and you're going to replace them with shrubs and small trees. It's once again, I think Eversource is having a very poor environmental impact. The tree problem has been in existence since utilities originally started putting in power lines. Somebody writes articles in the Willimantic Chronicle, and actually Pete Disco was a former Eversource employee, but he was writing articles and describing how they threw out the utility companies in many areas because they kept coming in and trying to take down people's trees. I don't think you can expect everyone to just cooperate with taking their trees down. And I think it's the cost of business for Eversource. And I'll bet every single homeowner on Route 169 who has their trees coming down all the time has a generator by now. So we're learning how to be a little bit more resourceful and less dependent on Eversource for our sole power supplies. Battery backups, we're trying to get those into people's homes. This is going to be alleviating the problem much better than taking down everybody's trees. So I would just echo Ginny and Jean that only plant native, and please stop emphasizing in your literature that you're giving out that people need to not use pesticides on these trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. And just to add something, as somebody on 169 with a generator, I would still very much appreciate my power not going out, because it's a lot harder with a generator than it is with Eversource Energy.
You're gonna love your battery. You're gonna love your battery backup. Quiet.
Who's gonna pay for my battery backup?
State, poor.
Yes. Anyone else have a question? Jordan Stern. Jordan Stern, unmute.
Trying to, okay, there we go. So a 30-foot high tree has got, taller trees got some benefits to the house to keep it cooler. Is a 30-foot high tree going to do the same? Is going to keep the house cooler?
So a 30-foot tall tree won't provide as much shade to the house, and that's why, this will be a conversation with the homeowners, and it will ultimately be up to them, what trees they will allow us to remove as part of this project. So that's certainly something that they can weigh. But a very tall tree right near a house also poses a risk of failure and damage to a property. And so, there's always two sides to the benefits of trees as well as the risk of failure.
Do you know how many trees are close to the house versus power lines?
I'm sorry, say that?
Do you know how many trees are close to the house and power lines? I've got 30 foot, I got higher trees next to my house, providing shade, but they're too far away from the power lines. Do you know how much is that where it's a high tree close to the house where it's far enough away from the power line?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. So you're saying you have tall trees near your house that provide shade to your house.
Right.
And are you wondering if they are far enough away from the
No,
power
they're
line?
far enough away from the power lines. I know that it's not affecting, but how many people out there have a tall tree next to their house that's also affected by the power line?
And so one thing I just do want to clarify, and I'm not sure if this relates to your question or not, but people have their power lines that run from the pole to their house, that
Oh,
service
okay.
line. So we're not talking about that line. We're talking about the lines that run pole to pole along the streets.
Right.
And so if you had a tall tree with a house that was set close to the road, then that still might be a tree that we would identify and want to speak with the homeowner and see if they would be interested in having it removed and replaced with a tree that's more compatible to be near the power lines. But that'll ultimately be the homeowners, the property owner's decision.
Do we know how many houses are like that? They have a house, close to the house, close to the houses next to the street, more or less, power line?
So we haven't surveyed all the trees because we wanted to follow up with this communication before we, went out onto people's private property. And so we met with the town officials and are meeting with you, and then we'll be going out onto the property. So we don't have that survey information yet.
Thank you.
Hey, anyone else have a question?
Lori has her hand up.
Yes,
Okay, Lori.
I have a group of questions. Jenna, thank you very much for this presentation. Couple things first to clarify and then questions. Do I understand correctly from what you said that that this particular initiative, the Resiliency Initiative, is not subject to arbitration, so that if a homeowner says that they're not interested, there's not going to be arbitration. It's automatically going to be acceptable to Eversource, and Eversource won't pursue or ask for arbitration. Homeowner can keep the trees.
So when you talk about arbitration, what you see in the news a lot these days has to do with transmission projects. So that's a very different thing. So, but I am going to walk you through the state law and how it pertains to us getting consent to, say, remove a tree. If the tree is on private property, the homeowner has the final say. There is no appeal process. Unless the tree is in direct contact with the electrical conductor, with the power line, or it shows signs of burning, then we can trim that direct contact. If a tree branch is touching the wire, we don't need consent. But if the tree is on private property, meaning it's not in the town right of way, then there is no appeals. It's private property, we do not have consent. I'm going to try to walk you through the town right of way process. It's a little confusing, but basically, if there's a tree within the town right of way, we need to get permission from the town tree warden. And then we need documented notification. So documented notification is not the same as consent, but because we need a signature from the abutting property owner, it's sort of the same as consent. We need a signature on a consent form from that abutting property owner. Then what can happen is if the utility decides they want to appeal the tree warden's decision, there is a process laid out in the statutes, and I can give you the links to exactly where those state laws are. I can tell you this year, we haven't brought any cases to PURA on the distribution system through that process. So we much prefer to work things out at the local level, working with the tree warden. That being said, the abutting property owner can also appeal a tree warden decision to PURA. Whether they want it removed, whether they don't. But again, that is a process that we have not pursued with a single tree this year within the town right-of-ways across the state of Connecticut. And so we aim to work with the tree warden and the property owner. So there's a long answer, but if it's on private property, there is no appeal process. If it's in the town right-of-way, there is an appeal process that's set forth in PURA laws for how utility vegetation management has to follow the process. And I can send you that language if you're interested in looking at the whole process. It's hard to digest as some laws can be. But again, that's not something that we're aiming to do here. We want to work together with the town and the abutting property owners in this project.
I'd be very interested in seeing that, especially about what's the town right of way, et cetera. I'm wondering, I heard what you said about how you haven't actually had to act on that particular piece, but if you decided that In the past, when that has happened, I'm just curious to know how many times has a homeowner ever won? I actually got some feedback from someone that said that doesn't usually happen, that a homeowner wins. So I was just curious about if there's statistics.
There's so few that so few cases, I don't think we run statistics on it. I will tell
Yeah.
you, if you Google under the Hartford Current, in 2014, there was a case that was brought forward in Essex, Connecticut. So if you were to Google, and I can try to find the article on, Eversource, Essex, Connecticut, tree trimming appeal, it should come up. And the outcome of that, which is set by Pura, so Pura decided the outcome for that was kind of a compromise. They called it a light trim, meaning that Eversource wanted to trim to the full spec, and the customer didn't want the tree trimmed at all, I don't believe, and they kind of landed somewhere in the middle. That's the only case that I'm familiar with. I'd have to get back to you. I would say in the last 10 years, it's been fewer than 10 trees that have been brought to Pura on the distribution, but I'd have to run those exact numbers. I've only been with Eversource since 2018.
Okay, that's great. Another small group of questions. Cost per storm. I don't really expect that you might have cost per storm, but is there a range of dollars that Eversource is spending on these storms? And I'm asking the question because I'm curious to know if alternatives to perhaps cutting has ever come up, such as buried cables, especially through swaths that you were describing where there's high numbers of outages. I just wondered if there's alternatives to just simply cutting.
So I don't have any specific numbers to respond to that question. I'm not sure if anyone who's from community relations would like to respond to that question, but I don't have any specifics to share.
Sure, no problem. Seems like no one.
Are you done, Lori?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm not. If that information is available, I'd be interested in getting directed to where it is. I just, it seems like this is it's going to happen time and time again. Even if you were to cut, say, 30 feet back from where from where the lines were, as was described in that communication, there's trees that you were describing that are 80 feet tall. And it seems like what you're describing is a little bit different than that communication. If it was 30 feet back and you've got an 80-foot tree, probably an 80-foot tree should be considered if it's potentially going to fall on the transmission line. But I think that communication said only 30 feet back from the power lines would be considered. Do I have something mixed up?
Yeah, I think so the 30 feet really applies to the trees that we're going to be replanting, that they only grow 30 feet tall. And so that's really where that 30 feet number keeps coming up. You're absolutely right that that fall zone risk is going to be fluid based on where the lines are located and the height of the trees.
So then is the plan to consider trees that are, say, 80 feet away but could potentially fall on the lines? Is the plan to consider cutting those trees as well and replacing them with some of these other trees that are with growth expected under 30 feet?
So the idea is for the arborists and the arborists that are on this call to look at that entire area and assess that risk. But they also are going to take into account the condition of the tree, the lean of the tree, etc. And so there's a lot of factors, and that's why we have our Eversource arborists or licensed arborists going out to assess the individual trees from a risk standpoint, but they will be looking at everything within that.
Everything within the fall zone, basically, not just out to 30 feet. I got it. All right. All right. Thanks very much.
Okay,
And Manila has a
Pam and
question.
Ella? Yeah, Pam and Ella? Pam?
So Pam isn't able to raise her hand. Pam, I'm not sure if you want to unmute yourself.
I did.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, yes, we can
Oh,
hear you.
hi, how you doing? Hey, my name is Ray Morgan. I'm here with Pam Manella. And we've been listening to the conversation. And the question I have, because we live up here on Coy Road, and a lot of times when we get a down tree, a lot of the residents will ask us about it. I chop it up and they can come have it. While you're going through the process, I know you guys are talking about the trees and the heights and all that, but once you get past that, you will be dropping trees on a resident's property. My question is, I've seen a lot of trees dropped and just laid there. Are you going to be cleaning the trees up on the personal property along with the brush? And if you do, if the resident doesn't want the tree, are you going to leave it for the Woodstock resident, like find a central location at the landfill or a certain spot where maybe the residents, or what do you do with the trees that you lay down? I know it's a lot of questions. I'm just curious about the other process. Thank you.
That's a common question that we get. And so one thing to clarify is when we have emergency work, so if a tree fails and comes down, all we do is clear the road, clear our lines to restore power so that we can move on to the next power outage. And so you won't see cleanup if a tree fell naturally, it broke in a storm. Associated with this work, we will remove the wood if the resident requests that we do. So that is part of this project. We will remove the wood. We usually allow about 2 weeks so that people can come pick through the wood, and a lot of the wood disappears on its own. And so as far as setting something up with the town, we have to have a conversation with them, because if they have a site where people are coming to collect firewood, that can add liability and things like that. But it is a great idea, and we'd be happy to discuss it with the town and see if there's any options, because it can be challenging to move that wood around, the wood that doesn't get picked up by people who have wood burn. So.
All right, that's good. Thank you. I'm just glad we're talking about it. Thank you.
Okay, Jean Pillow. You're up again.
Showed a nice graphic of a house and trees in the front yard, but I started thinking about where you're talking about for this project, Route 169 and Route 171 primarily. And there's a lot of stretches of those roadways that don't have residences, and they're wood tree lined roads with woods behind it. Are you talking about clearing all the trees within the fall line of the power lines in those sections of the road as well?
Yes.
That would change the character of our roads tremendously to have the trees removed along our state highways. And we already have a problem with people driving too fast. And studies have shown that when you have a better line of sight, for some reason, mentally you think you can drive faster. And that is very scary to me. So I'm thinking of how changed the landscape would be if all the trees within the fall line of the power lines along those state highways were to be felled. And then how many trees would you replace them with under 30 feet? I mean, they're talking a lot of trees.
We are, and all those trees need consent to remove, and then we would create a plan near the power lines to replant with compatible species. So we are talking about extensive planting plans. We can create, pollinator gardens. There's a lot of options available to us. So we are going to be looking at those trees, but we'll need consent to remove them, and we'll be developing planting plans for those areas.
And can you turn your volume up, please? You can barely hear you.
Okay, does anyone else have a question?
Well, very quickly, I want to mention that I became aware since our last meeting that many of the towns that are on the list are opposing this and asking for more scientific basis for the proposal to do this pilot project. And I'm very concerned of the implications of, again, along the state highways, clear cutting a lot of trees and putting lower trees in and changing the landscape like forever. And I think this is something we need to give serious thought to, and people need to be educated about the process. And I mean, I don't want anybody to have their power go out, but having alternative proposals are worth examining.
Thank you, Jean. Anyone else have a question? Okay, if not, thank you, Jenna, and everybody else from Eversource for coming to our meeting tonight and answering our questions.
Thank you, and I'll share my email address, so if anyone has any questions, they can reach out to me.
Okay, then moving on with the meeting, we have our minutes, and we need to approve minutes from last month. So has anyone gotten a chance to read the minutes, and is there a motion to approve them?
I motion to approve.
Hey,
Second.
Jordan
Okay.
seconds. Jordan raised his hand to second.
Okay.
Any anyone abstaining? Okay, then let me go and check my agenda. Okay, next treasurer's report. So Grace, anything from the treasurer? Grace, you have to unmute.
Okay, there you go. Is that better? $1,914 is our budget, and our special fund, which is unaudited as yet, is $2,161.22.
Okay, any questions for Grace? Okay, moving on, chairman's report, nothing to report.
How's the
Next
weather in the
is,
Azores?
oh.
It
been
rained here
beautiful.
today, Lee.
I know, we've been following closely the local weather. So yes, we're very happy here to hear it rain. Okay, any communications? Crystal, anything in the, oh, Grace?
We got a thank you note from the Girl Scout troop for the donation that we sent them. And we got confirmation letter of Crystal being reappointed until March of 2027.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, on to old business, DRC report, Jean,
Nothing to
meet?
report.
okay. Crystal, anything with open space?
I let them know about the meeting tonight and about the Eversource representatives being here. We talked about the Woodstock Locally Grown Day and how that went. We discussed, we had some members of the public there with some interest in some town property, and we discussed the open space ordinance about that.
Okay, any questions for Crystal? Okay, P and Z, I reviewed minutes, nothing having to do with us. Jean, any comments?
No.
Okay, Grace, Ag Commission?
Yeah, they talked about obviously the local grown event. And well, we have that for review later on, so I'll hold off on that. But other than that, they were mostly concerned with things from the Department of Agriculture and their representation. and trying to change some of the verbiage in town ordinances in reference to farm stands and farm stores, but nothing specifically that would impact us.
Okay, any questions for Grace? Okay, stewardship. Pam and Lori, are you involved in stewardship still?
No,
Okay, Lori, you're involved in that?
No?
Okay,
I think it was Beth and Maura.
Beth and Maura, okay, okay, so Maura's not here to ask. I know Beth doesn't have time for it anymore. Okay, pollinator pathway update. Jean,
Well, I was going to report that we were present at Locally Grown Day. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Crystal. And Maura also participated. I was amazed that there were people waiting to talk to me and talk to us before the project, before the day officially started. While I was trying to put tape on the canopy that is no longer in service after that event. But we got about a dozen people sign up to join the pollinator pathway. We still have medallions left, and a lot of good information was exchanged.
good. Any questions for Jean?
I want to mention that Maura brought some posters to give out too.
Okay. Crystal, anything, Sustainable Connecticut update?
Nope. I mean, the event that was held, if someone wants to go on and enter it and put it in there, then they could.
I will sit down one day and I will enter all the different things that I need to enter. I'll just make it a priority one day.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So any comments on the locally grown event? We just heard a few. Anything else to add?
Jordan, did you have any
Jean?
interesting conversations?
I really did not. No, sorry, you were there and then you left and I just was there. Sorry.
Well, you were there, but that's important. The table was manned, so.
Okay, new business. Anyone have the opportunity to attend any workshops in the last month? And anyone aware of any workshops coming up?
I will be holding a meeting on August 31 at the Elm Farm to Table Market, the new barn. There's a covering. It's going to be the Little River Water, Healthy Watershed Committee getting together and giving updates on happenings in Little River Watershed. This meeting is open to the public. It'll be from 9 to 11 and everybody is invited to attend.
and where is that again, please?
At the Farm to Table Market, Woodstock Road, Elm Farm, kind of Woodstock Road and Dug Hill Road
Hill.
intersection.
Oh, okay,
So there's a new barn that was put up.
yeah,
And the meeting is going to be focused on the Little River Watershed and what's going on. And it's also going to include a tour of the new barn and nutrient management system that was installed. And everybody is invited.
I'm sorry, when is it?
August 31 at 9 a.m.
Thank you.
Hosted by
Okay,
the
open-
Eastern Connecticut Conservation District.
Cool. Okay, open discussion. Crystal.
I don't have
Anything?
anything. I
Pam?
did actually,
Oh, Crystal.
I did post on the town website. We posted some tips about the private well owners and some, about the drought. And actually that post has been shared almost 200 times and almost 40,000 people have seen that post with that information about tips for well owners in the drought.
Excellent.
And I did
Thanks.
confirm with Josh Batone, that he's still our, our drought coordinator with NECOG.
Now, speaking of wells, just to let you guys know, we had our well tested and we're high in arsenic, and our neighbor's high in arsenic, and I guess arsenic's all over.
Yes, it's all over.
place. Yeah, just
Reverse
Um,
osmosis should help you for drinking water.
correct. Yes.
How do I know?
Pam, Pam,
No,
anything?
no.
Okay. Grace?
Actually, yeah, I attended a meeting of the, Celebrating Ag People Commission.
Yeah,
Well, as we all know, there is not going to be any Celebrating Ag this year, but they're very, very interested in having it in 2023. And it looks like hopefully it will actually occur right next to the fair on Fairview Farms property.
Ah,
Yeah, which will, well, as I say, those of us who were in attendance were very excited about keeping it. They had spoken originally about possibly moving it to Brooklyn Fairgrounds because they did not have a very good feedback from the Woodstock Fair people. And were afraid that it might not happen, but it looks like, well, as I say, very much. And of course, they're looking for help, obviously. But again, as I say, I'm fingers crossed. It sounded pretty positive that, because one of the biggest things, as we all know, as they were talking about, there were somewhere between 500 and 1,000 people took the hayride through Fairview Farms. I mean, that was one of the biggest draws. So fingers crossed.
Hmm.
If anybody wants, their next meeting is actually September 9th at Taylor Brook Winery, 9 a.m. in the morning. So
Thank
it's
you.
not a drinking meeting, but no, as I say, they're
Could
definitely
be.
looking for support. And as I say, basically, I was with very much the people that want this to happen. I think it's a very, very good thing for Woodstock, and hence the reason we were against going to the Brooklyn Fair. And I said, it's Woodstock, and we're trying to promote that. So again, with locally grown, as I said, that was very successful. And they talked about, going to the different farms, which is wonderful. And it's very nice. But there's an awful lot of people, especially if they're not from Woodstock, don't want to be trying to travel around to different farms because they just don't know their way around. I'd rather have it at one location. So, as I
Okay,
said,
thanks, Grace. Jordan? Jordan has no. Lori?
Nothing.
No. Jean?
I have a question for Crystal. It has to do with the drought and posting on the town Facebook page, which I copied from somebody and I put it up on the Conservation Commission Facebook page as well. Do you have any sense of how many homeowners locally have been impacted by the lowering of the water table and lost their wells?
I know one person has called into the town to report that his well has gone dry and to ask if he could come into the town hall and fill jugs of water, which we said yes. And I know he did come in at least once last week.
And how is this impacting our ability to fight fires where we use like rivers and ponds for the source of fire suppression?
But that is something that, our drought coordinator He is a member of one of the fire departments, and they do keep an eye on that. I believe the tankers trucks that the fire departments have, I think they're kept filled with water. And we have a lot of different ponds and access points for the fire departments to get water as needed. I know the fire that was in Dudley Friday, early Friday morning or late Thursday night, the town of Dudley actually ran their water supplies out. I think they have we're calling in mutual aid from Woodstock and other towns that were just tanker trucks, just, for the water. But that is something that the fire departments, I believe, are keeping an eye on. And, I believe that they know where the places are that maybe they wouldn't go to, and maybe the places are that have a deeper capacity.
I mean, I know a lot of the streams have dried up completely or nearly completely.
I
And
know a lot of the streams have, but if you drive around town, you see a lot of the water hole signs, and a lot of them are in like little ponds or bigger ponds, and we have the lakes also. And I believe that is something that the fire departments keep an eye on.
yeah, it's concerning. I mean, the pond next door to me is really low, and I think they fill the tankers a couple times and it would drain it. So
Yeah, well, I think it helps, that the person who is our drought coordinator is also, a member of the fire department. He's also worked with our, as our deputy emergency management director in the past. So I think he's got a firm grasp on those concerns.
oh, that's good. Does concern me.
But it's no
Thank you.
different than if you think about if a fire happens in the middle of winter, you have water concerns. They're a little different because it's ice, but it is something that the fire departments keep an eye on.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jim?
Nope, I've got nothing.
Oh, Jordan's raising his hand. Yes, Jordan.
Do we know anything what's happening on Senexit Road? Looked like they were treating some wetland. They were cleaning up some wetland area. Senexit Road, do we know anything about that? They're working Sunday, everything backhoeing and all that, the wetland area.
I don't know anything about the Senexit Road. Is it on private property? Is it?
It seems like private property, yeah. It's Senexit Road past past Woodstock Farms there, down a little bit, down the road a little bit. They're working Sunday with backhoes and big dump trucks and scooping stuff out. And
I mean, you could go through minutes of P&Z and inland wetlands and see if you see anything regarding that, or just ask them. I don't know anything.
Or you could call the building office and find out if a permit has been issued for that. And that's something that's worth following up to make sure that
Yeah.
it's a permitted activity.
I don't even think you have to call them. I think you can go online and check it out on the permit link. Put in the address.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn? Jordan makes motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Crystal seconds. Okay, thank you. It's well after midnight for me.
go to bed, Lee.
Have to wake up early to fly home. So,
Well, I hope you had a
will
nice
bid you all-
vacation.
yes, I did. I'll bid you all adieu, and I'll be home soon.
Have a good trip back.
Safe travel.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.